Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So I'm back from my month-long vacation. I actually forgot how to paint, so I'm going to try to do this with a sponge and also some palette knives because I find it a lot less intimidating. So what I want to do is I want to create like a kind of very inkish kind of background. I'm going to do this with three colors. Dark colors, which would be Prussian blue, Mighty's green, and dark Sazin violet. So what I want to do here is I'm just kind of like starting it with dark blue, Prussian blue around the edges, and then I fill it up with dark Sazin violet, and in the spaces I scrub in that Mighty's green. So I'm a little sad that my vacation has come to an end, and also because my other half will be away 1,000 miles away again till the next vacation, which comes in about 100 days or so. Hence, it's back to premieres every 5 days again. So for those of you who have been here, thank you so much for keeping the channel alive. You know who you are. So when I started this background, it didn't go exactly as planned because it was a little bit, the first layer was actually quite translucent. So I had to wait for the paint to dry, and then I go over again and again and again till it's opaque. This is, I think, close to my third layer, and I wanted it to kind of add a little bit of glow. So what I'm trying to do now is I'm just dabbing in a lighter shade of color, which what I'm using here is purple pale on the purple part. And then I use the tip of the sponge and I dab to kind of blend it in. And then for the green part, I use Viridian green, and then I again use the sponge and tap and blend it in. I don't really experiment with sponge quite often, but what I find is that when I kind of pinch the tip of the sponge for a smaller surface, it's actually much easier to blend compared to the whole big surface of the sponge. So in addition to that, I'm also kind of using the dark colors, and I'm just dabbing around the spots that I want it to glow to smoothen out the thing. Because as you can see from before this, it still looks a bit, the finishing wasn't smooth enough. There were some parts that was just a little bit transparent and some parts that were just a little bit more darker, and it looked a little bit uneven. So right now I find that this looks a lot better, a lot more polished, and I'm just going to add the light colors on where I want it to glow and accentuate around it with the darker shades of blue, green, and purple. So the background is supposed to be a dark pool of water. That's why I'm trying to capture all the kind of ripples around it. To be honest, I think this would have been great with alcohol ink, but I'll experiment that in maybe the next painting. Once this background has dried, I'm gonna just draw a few lily pads here, and I'm just drawing it with a chalk because it's just easy to wipe off after that. And then to brighten up the whole piece, I'm going to draw two koi fishes on the right side of this canvas. Well, I'm not sure if it's a coincidence, but I think I tend to gravitate towards lily pads and lotus paintings once I'm back from a long break. Like the last long break I had, the first thing I painted was with palette knives and a bunch of lilies as well. But the paintbrush is still very intimidating, so I'll probably break into it for my next painting. So recently I've been obsessed with olive green. I usually used to love Viridian green and all these other bright shades of green, but I'm starting to gravitate towards an earthier shade of green. So for the lily pads, I'm using olive green, sap green, and Mighty's green for the darker shades because I like my lily pads to be colorful. Also, I add in a dash of Naples yellow. It's actually quite fun when you kind of color mix it. So with these few colors, I paint some lily pads darker and some lighter, and just to make it a little bit more colorful. So what I'm doing now is I'm just kind of color mapping the lily pads with the paintbrush. So I know what colors I'm going to put on with the impasto paint, with the palette knife, the second layer. And then for the koi fish, I'm just going to color in with portrait tone. Once this is all dried up, then I can use a wet wipe and just wipe away the chalk. So you can see it's just a very rough painting because I just want to kind of paint it out. Then now I'm going to put the thick paint over it. So for the next step, what I do is I get the medium, like an impasto medium, and then I mix the paints with it. Then I scoop it up with this palette knife and then I apply it onto the surface that I've painted on. I love working with the palette knife. I think it's a lot less intimidating and much more forgiving than a paintbrush because it's rough, but that's the way it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be rough, untextured, So I actually really enjoyed painting this piece. The only tricky part I think would be to stay in the shape of the lily pads because I want my lily pads to be like not perfect circles, so it's going to be a bit uneven around the edges or the corners. So trying to stay within what I've painted or drawn with the knife was perhaps a little bit challenging, especially for the smaller lily pads. So for how I create this textured pattern for the lily pads, I do two steps. So the first step would be I drag the paint from the outer circle to the middle of the lily pad. And then I smoothen it out by dragging out from the middle towards the outer circle. So this is kind of like a two-step process thing. Just trying to keep the thing tidy but also textured enough with all the palette knife strokes. So in my vision, when I was mapping out this painting in my mind, I wanted the middle part to be a little bit more lighter with shades of yellow. So I'm adding more Naples yellow to the lily pads in the middle. Okay, I'm not a professional artist, but I think that a large part of what makes a painting good is how harmonious the colors are, that they kind of have to go together. So I think that if anyone with a decent amount of fashion sense and color coordination are most likely to produce a decent painting. I would like to think I'm a fashionista. But anyway, while I was babbling on earlier about the harmony of colors and stuff, I was actually wiping away the chalk with a wet wipe. So now you can see that the chalk outlines are gone. And I think that's quite simple. And I think it would be a great hack instead of kind of using a pencil and everything when you can't see it, or even riskier to kind of draw with a paint, especially if you're not great at drawing like me. But only do that when the paint is dried. So I couldn't finish that part in time and had to return to work. So I left it overnight, and then this is the next day. So here's an up close shot of how I kind of get the strokes in. It's painstakingly slow, but also very therapeutic. Then as you can see, I'm just doing that two-way thing. I'm dragging it out from the outside, and then I smoothen it again from the inside to bring it outwards. But it's very satisfying when you can see all the fine strokes and the texture when it all dries up. I fast forwarded it a little because I think it's going to get a bit boring if you just watch the same thing over and over again. I kind of wanted to show that how the middle part of it is more yellow, and then the surrounding lily pads I'm just painting it in a bit darker so there'll be no yellow tones over it. Next, we're going to work on the koi fishes. So this is actually a little bit harder, and you'll see why. First, I want to do a bit of shading. So for the darker part of the shading, I'm going to use purple pale, and then I'm going to add a little bit of portrait tone. So koi fishes usually come in either red or white, or orange and darker orange. So I'm choosing the orange kois for mine. So when I say that this is a little bit harder, it's because it's very hard to control it, or not to smudge it because there's so many different colors involved. What was challenging for me here is trying to not muddy the white, because you can't really like blend it, but you just kind of have to build it, just paste this patch of paint and then move on to the next spot. Okay, there's this part on top of the fish. I wanted to add like a streak of white so it gives a little bit more definition to the koi fish's shape. It's a very subtle move, but I feel that it kind of adds movement to the koi because it's kind of like the fins, or because the koi scales are actually very shiny. So when the light shines upon the pond or on the koi fish swimming inside, then the top of the koi will catch its light and reflect it. So anyway, we're working on the second koi fish right now. Another challenge that I faced was trying to build the pattern of the koi, like the patches of it, or where it's going to be yellow, orange yellow, and where it's going to be orange red. Okay, now that that is out of the way, I want to add a bit of gold into it. I think gold always adds a bit of magic to every painting. So for this part here, I add gold with the Impasto medium, and then with the tip of the palette knife, I press it down to create this little gold sparkles. Personally, if I had it my way and the supplies right now, I would love to do this with gold leaf, but I don't, so I'll have to do with gold paint for now. Okay, the next step, what I want to do is I am using a paintbrush with the Impasto gold mix that I made earlier, and I'm kind of outlining the lily pads. Not the whole thing, but just certain parts of it. I still want to keep that element of unevenness around the edges of the lily pad so it looks a bit rough, but I also want to kind of just add a bit more gold and highlight it, and I kind of like how it turned out. My only problem when working with gold paint is that it doesn't feel bright enough, but I realized that when I mix it with the Impasto paint, then the gold paint tends to stick together and be thicker, so it looks a lot more brighter when I paint it on. So this is one of the final steps of it, and I'm pretty glad that we're finished. And I'm also pretty happy with how this piece turned out. I can't believe I did a 13-minute long voiceover. We have come a long way, guys. It's still very choppy, but I'm going to try and practice more. But anyway, you will see that I have actually turned this painting from landscape to portrait, because legend has it that the koi fish scaled a mighty waterfall on the promise of success and happiness at its crest. Rising through the rushing water with grace and determination, they were transformed into golden dragons when they reached the top. So here are my koi fishes swimming upstream, and I actually kind of like how this looks. So anyway, this painting is available on Etsy. It can be styled both ways if you want it to be landscape or portrait. Link to the shop is in the description below. And thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope to see you again in the next video. Goodbye.